the hardest part.
About getting someone to go in with you?
Good
Yeah.
evening. Welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for April 24th, 2019, room 124 at 7:15 PM. Tonight we will be conducting completing the enclave review, but prior to that, we're going to be looking at Norfolk Center, Meeting House Road, a discussion with regard to a cash surety bond for the balance of the work. Rich McCarthy, would you like to bring us up to date on what's been going on at Meeting House Road?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Rich, before you start, this meeting is being audio and video recorded per the open meeting laws of the state of Massachusetts. Sorry, Rich, go ahead.
Okay. You have before you a punch list that was prepared by Beta Engineering for the remaining items to be completed at Meeting House for the remaining 20 units of affordable housing on the right-hand side. This punch list has been forwarded to Mr. Marini, who's the owner of the 40B units on Meeting House Road that are left. The discussion with Mr. Marini was that a couple of things. One, a few points. One was that I guess he had not paid particular attention that the board wasn't allowing a dumpster to be used for refuse. Because if you go up there today, there are dumpsters, so he understands that. And so he has to remove the dumpster pads to get rid of them. And the condominium units will be similar to like the other side of the street, where trash pickup and recyclables will be through a private hauler. So he now understands that, so he'll be taking care of that. That was one of the conditions of it. And then the more substantive matter is the occupancy permits. We have, as part of the comprehensive permit, the final work was to be done prior to the last 4 occupancy permits being issued. Right now, he has, unfortunately, there was one that was issued back in January, end of January, which actually put us below 4, 3 remaining. At the time, back in January, that unit was a market rate unit. Where we stand today is that he's seeking occupancy permit for 2 affordable units. There is a third market rate unit that actually is very close. He hasn't applied for occupancy permit, but is very close. So conversations back and forth with Mr. Marini is that he would like to receive the final occupancy permits for the remaining units, recognizing the fact that all the work needs to be done prior to this point. He has indicated in conversations that he will get the paving company out there next week and then get a crew out there to finish up the remaining punch list items to be completed. In an ordinary course, it wouldn't be, we would try to proceed and get things tidy, but we're up against the 2 affordables. They have closing dates next week, and there's where it gets a little bit challenging for us. We, in the position where we want to make sure we can get the units occupied with the affordable buyers, but we're at that point where there's work to be left on the site per the permit, and so we're in that in-between state. And what I'd like the board to give consideration to is to, you would have to do it through modification, which would be the 13th modification to this comprehensive permit, but to allow for the occupancy to be issued tomorrow for the affordable units, but no occupancy on the market rate unit. Now, discussions with Mr. Marini, that market rate unit is being sold for $460,000. So it's a significant amount of money coming to him as surety, to speak, We had conversations about additional cash bond being placed with the town. And he indicated that the last unit, being a market rate of $460,000, was a significant amount of surety. He also recognizes that he hasn't followed the comprehensive permit as it was issued. So we're in this in-between state. While I understand it's challenging for the board, you want to make sure we hold everybody to the permit, and I agree with that. But at the same time, I think we would not want to be in a position, I would think, as a town, to not allow for the two people who went through the whole process, the lottery, to be qualified and get ready to have a closing next week. So, looking for a little guidance from the board about what perhaps we could come up with to come to some middle ground, so to speak.
Thank you. Bob, you had a chance to look at Beta's work, and I know you're going to be doing some work up there as well. Do you want to just update us a little bit on that? Did you have a chance?
My part in this is within the right-of-way, as you know. Early on, just as a bit of history, this project was approved with commercial design. It since changed, and it went from things like street lights every 70 feet to kind of like bump-in parking and stuff, to where we knew, later on when it was changed from a commercial application, it went to a residential setting. So, as you know, we took like every other light and we spotted it across the street so it didn't look so well lit. We straightened out the curb line because, as you know, there really isn't any on-street parking. And it gave a little bit more to the landscape look. And with that, we got to the point right now where we, I think it was this board, maybe with the help of the previous town administrator, negotiated funds so that we could, the street was in pretty bad shape, so it needed reclamation, it needed curb setting. I mentioned about the lights being switched across the street, trees needed to be planted and stuff, so our part was to take the bond, reclamate the street, adjust the castings. We put the money in, we set curbing, and created the roundabout that's up there. And what I read from what Beta has, I guess it really hasn't changed that much. There was something that may be a little bit unclear, but we worked this out almost verbally with Mr. Marini, was that with the money that we had, we were going to do everything up to the curb line, include setting the curb, and he was responsible for the trees, the lights, the sidewalk behind it, right up to the private properties. And pretty much that's where it stands. The only thing I did was go beyond, was as soon as we set the curb, I backloaded everything with loom, compacted it. Well, I raked out the loam and I got it ready for seed, where it stands right now. I know that this is the time of the year to be planting trees, and I know that sometimes when there's some disagreements and negotiations coming down, if he decided to plant the trees and it isn't until July, it's a wrong time to do it. So I went ahead and I ordered some trees. I figured we can arm wrestle for the funds later. In the worst case scenario is I do have the funds until then. So my plan is now to plant the trees. I'm going to run a little bit of conduit to another proposed street light in the event that we need it. We're going to loom and seed this. We're going to re-rake the loom and seed it tomorrow. And after the heavy work is done, we'll top the street. And I think we just have enough funds to come in under the wire. I don't see much difference in what Beta has come up with their observations. I think we're very close to a nice-looking project at the end.
Ms. Jacobson, you can hopefully help us here. Do you want to shed a little light on?
Sure. So we are anticipating closing on these units on Tuesday, April 30th. These buyers were qualified back in January. And what happens is if we go beyond April 30th, they have to not completely requalify, but submit all of their financial documents again, bank statements, pay stubs, and in a particular incident, not not either one of these buyers, but in the past, when we had a delay of a closing, somebody had worked a month of overtime because an employee in their company was ill, so they were asked to come in and work overtime. They worked overtime for that month, and when they resubmitted their pay stubs, because it went beyond what the closing date was scheduled, they fell out of compliance. They were no longer eligible. Because we take these paychecks, and I look at them first and then submit them to DHCD for a second look, and we project forward. So this person may have never been asked to work overtime again, but for that month, they did work overtime, and it put them outside of the income limit. For nothing that individual did. So my concern is two things. First, I don't think it's a great impression of the town of Norfolk that of the 3 units that we're pulling occupancy permits on, 2 of them are affordable. I just don't think that, and I think we're a town that's working very hard to show that we're trying to make strides in affordable housing, and I think to potentially not allow these people to close on April 30th, and maybe they'll go out of eligibility, maybe they won't. I don't know how long it's going to take for them to be able to close again. It's not something that we want to project, and I'm hoping that holding 1 market rate unit will satisfy the monetary amount that we need to make sure that Mr. Marini comes through. So I'm really here on behalf of the affordable buyers that, have done everything that's asked, have been pre-approved, have provided all their financial documents, who are anticipating closing on Tuesday. I know one of the applicants rents an apartment and has already provided her notice. There's always can be, for those of us that have purchased homes, there can always be a little snafu, and it can go a couple of days here or there, but this would, would be a much longer time frame than that. So I'm here to ask the board on behalf of these 2 affordable buyers to allow them to provide me with the occupancy permits. They both have passed all of their inspections through the building department, and the building department, based on your ruling, if it's favorable, will give me occupancy permits first thing in the morning for me to get to a bank.
I have a question.
Sure.
Bob, if you go to the next page, where it says, provided plans and things that need to be done, based on the Thank you. Based on the market rate unit that would be held back at, there was the rate of 460,000, but is that sufficient surety, so to speak, for us to accomplish all of those things?
I apologize. This is probably what, Chris, your question was to me in the first place. I really only paid attention to things that happened in the right-of-way. So what he has to finish that is to pave the back. And I didn't look at I didn't really key in on what private issues he has to do to finish, so I couldn't answer that, but
I can probably answer it. The Beta, we had Beta, Phil Paratus go out there. And I think, Amy, can you get to the financials? All the way down to the bottom, last page. So we had Beta go out and do an as-built. So this is the list. So at Mass DOT, which is really prevailing wage. So if it had to be done by the town, paying prevailing wage, the cost to do these items would be $97,478. Obviously, for the builder to do it, it is probably 50% of that. So the market rate unit is more than acceptable to cover the cost of the work that has to be done. The key is and I think Rich was trying all day, and we were trying, is the incentive for him to give us a cash bond in case he didn't get it done. Because we've already violated the comprehensive permit. We already released 1 occupancy permit we shouldn't have released. So we're sort of behind the 8 ball as it is. He refuses to do that. So we do have enough funds available for him to do this. And I've told Rich to keep his feet to the fire. And Bob should also, any work you do that is part of his requirements, we have got to document, so Rich can go back to him before we release that last occupancy permit and get those funds.
So it sounds to me like our risk is pretty minimal.
The difficult part is, how do you get the unit? So we released the two affordables. We have one unit sitting there. He doesn't do the work. We have to put a lien on the unit, we have to go to court, we have to take it that way. It's a cost to the town, and that's what we are trying to avoid. We are hoping that, my understanding is he has a buyer for that last unit, so hopefully he has a lot of incentive to get this done, work with Bob, because Bob's people are ready to start work out there as well to finish this project, which, as we all know, has gone on for too long. So, yes, are we covered? We are. It's just the way Mr. Marini has done it, and the fact that one affordable is let go puts this board, again, in a precarious
But
situation.
we learn by our
Precarious
mistake.
situation,
We
yes.
learn by our mistakes.
We have learned, and the sad part is the comprehensive permit we will be reviewing tonight. We've taken this duly noted, and we'll make sure that it doesn't happen again.
But I think based on
The
what
Bosco
you
bears the cost of this as usual, but that's all right.
what you just mentioned, I mean, our risk is pretty minimal.
Yes.
And it would also seem that Mr. Marini would like to exit this project as soon as he can. So it would seem, from my perspective, that based on what we're hearing from Sue, that this is a reasonable request.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there is a lot of affordable units out there, so it's very hard. It's not as easy to sell affordable units as it is market rate units. And again, as Sue said, the impression is of the town. Why should, these affordable units shouldn't suffer because an occupancy permit was let go and a developer isn't living up to his end of the bargain. I don't think that's, as frustrating as it is for me, it's not the right message to send, as Sue said. It's not the right message.
And
Any
I,
other?
I want to add, I can tell you that the market rate unit, the broker for that unit has contacted us. I've avoided calling her at the moment, but because I know she's probably has a frustrated buyer on this. So there is a buyer that's anxiously trying to get into that market rate unit. So it's not as if, you know, there isn't somebody to come in and buy it.
And just a further note, the two units that were released, the market rate units, Mr. Marini hasn't been able to sell any of those units because the building was tied up in land court, and it was just released last week. So those people have actually been there renting those units. So there hasn't been a sale yet in that building.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Just for a point of reference, it took us 10 years to complete the other side of the street with Mr. Borelli in and out of court. We were in the same situation with him, and it took a long, long time to complete the project and get him to finish what he was supposed to. So I just want to make. Okay. Oh, I guess I'm live. I just want to make sure that we are going to hold his feet to the fire in the sense that we've got $100,000 worth of work that needs to be completed. Are we going to do the cash bond, or are we not doing the cash bond? I would like to see us do a cash bond.
He has refused to do a cash bond. So we would have to, if we release these two affordable units, our leverage is not releasing the occupancy permit on the last unit, which has a market rate of $460,000, until this work is completed.
I mean, it's gonna be, he could walk away from that last unit.
That's what I said, we'd have to file suit in court and go after him.
Is that last unit, is there a purchase and sales agreement on the last unit right now?
I don't, is there a purchase and sale, do you know, on that last the last market rate unit?
Yes, there is a purchase sales on the last unit.
So, I mean, that says a lot about that, that doesn't guarantee it's gonna be
Just
sold.
walking away doesn't make sense.
Doesn't guarantee that he's gonna finish the work either.
Yeah. Yeah, walking away doesn't make sense at that
Well,
point.
there's no
No.
guarantees, but,
He's got an incentive to complete this project. It's just frustrating the manner in which he's addressed it.
We wouldn't give him an occupancy permit for the last
We
unit,
will not give him an occupancy permit until everything is done
plain and simple.
and reviewed, again, by Beta,
And I know you have a meeting next Wednesday, I believe, right?
the
May
first.
yeah. So I can give you an update between Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, too. Wednesday night, because he had said, so if he follows through as a man of his word, which he said he was, he's supposed to have people out there next Monday
Well,
to get cracking on it, so I
I
can.
don't think that's necessary.
It doesn't solve our problem tonight, but yes.
No, it
would be
doesn't solve a
helpful.
problem, but at least to give you assurance that he's moving forward to complete it.
Any other questions for,
Is that the only leverage that we have?
it's the only leverage we have?
That's it, there's nothing else, there's no, I don't know, penalty or something, you know?
Devin, any questions? No. Joe?
No.
How do these, how do the affordables go to market? How do they even go to market without, without the stuff even being addressed? So, I mean, right now, there are 2 units that are being rented because they were released, and but for that court action, they'd be sold.
You're right, they're not affordable units, they're market rate units that are being rented.
Well, how any units at all, really, you know, how can they even get this far along with leaving it in that condition? How does it happen? It just happens?
I'm not involved in that
Yeah,
part of the
okay, sorry.
process. I mean, as far as the affordables being under agreement, that's a lottery that,
Yep.
you know, is held when the project is approved and it gets so far. There are 5 affordables up there, and 3 have already been sold and, you know, we didn't have any of these issues. I think it's because we've come to the end, Bob, and, you know, we're at the end of the line now, and
Yeah.
It should have never gone to where 2 affordables were being held
Yeah.
in this situation. We should have had a second market rate unit, which would have given us a lot more leverage. We don't. It was released. And, it just, as Rich said, we have to do a better job of monitoring these comprehensive permits, as we do all permits, to make sure that the conditions are being met. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, the pump house, did Beta look at the pump house at all to make sure that's functioning properly? And does the pump house remain part of the association, or does the town take that over, Bob? Association, okay.
And we did ask them to look at it as well.
Bob, I just want to confirm with what you said. So, did you say you've already purchased the landscaping trees?
I didn't purchase them. I'm under agreement with a local landscaper to get it done.
Okay.
It's considerably less money than this. This must be a lot of interior trees as well.
Okay.
Chris, I look at this estimate, and to me, by scale, there's like 2 weeks' work here. I can't believe that Mr. Marini just can't work through this. And he said he wouldn't do this. I'm kind of,
No, he's gonna do the work, but he wouldn't post a cash bond prior to releasing these 2 units, these 2 affordable units. He
So
said
he-
he'll do the work. So he's sort of putting the 2 affordable units at risk, the sale of them at
I
risk,
understand.
which is what and obviously Susan is trying to, is obviously trying to protect those units to be sold, which, because
If
people have
you
gone through the
wanted me to
process.
reach out to him, I'd be glad to do it. The work, if we work together, it would be advantageous for, the town. It'd be advantageous for him and the people living there, especially where the biggest unit price here is the asphalt. Maybe he could cash in on the same contractor that we use and get it done the same day, because it's only a day's work, it's.
I don't mind you assisting him, but he has not been willing to work with us, so I don't want you to go out of your way.
No, it would be to.
Give
it
him
would
any
be to-
benefits, because he really hasn't, and he could have very easily solved this problem. And this would be a simple vote by the board, but he's created a dilemma for the board that puts us
I'm always
puts
just
us
thinking
at
of the
risk.
residents that are left
Yeah,
behind.
no, I know.
Because of arguments.
So, to go forward here, I guess I'm gonna ask for a motion for a
Modification?
modification number 13 to the comprehensive permit for Norfolk Center LLC to allow the release of the 2 affordable units tomorrow, with 1 market rate unit being held until all work is completed per the Beta letter dated 4/23/19.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Second,
Can we, second?
Second.
discussion. Go ahead.
Oh, that was it, I was gonna make that motion.
Oh.
I was just gonna restate
Beat
your
you
motion.
to it. So moved. He's learned. Any discussion? Okay, I'm gonna ask for, this is a motion to grant. So, Bob?
Yes to grant.
Yes, to grant.
Yes to grant.
Yes to grant.
Yes to grant.
Yes to grant. So we will grant the release of the 2 affordable units, and we will, Rich, please work with Bob, Mr. Marini, to get this work done. Please update us next week. Bob, again, any help you can give is great, but we are not in the business of helping this developer because he hasn't been willing to work with us. So don't keep his feet to the fire. If you're gonna buy 17 trees, he owes us 36. Make sure he reimburses the town, because we will not release this last occupancy permit until that's done.
I just wanted to say thank you to the board.
Thank you.
I did as well.
Thank you, Rich. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, this time we are going to continue the public hearing for the enclave. And we are going to try to go through the waivers and conditions that relate to the DPW so that Bob McGee can get out of here at a reasonable hour. So if that's all right with John and Tom, we thought that might be the way we'll approach it, okay? So at this time, I'll turn it over to Dan.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I'd like permission to recuse myself.
you may. Thank you. Thank you for your help.
All right, do you want me to plug this in to the screen, and, do you wanna walk through the changes from
Yeah.
last time?
Yeah.
Is that the plan?
Yeah, maybe just hit the, try to do the
DVW.
ones that relate to DPW first, if you can. I know it's not easy.
So I think I should pull up the red line version, and just, that way we can see the changes.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's the most
Sure.
corrective, most efficient way to do it. Actually, I just, I needed 1 minute to make
Okay, take your time.
another compare version.
Chris, could we have a 2-minute recess while we get things organized here?
graduating fifth year. Summa cum laude. It's my kid.
Welcome back to the zoning board meeting of April 24th. We are continuing the public hearing with regard to the enclave. Dan Hill, special counsel to the ZBA, will now begin going through the revisions of the waivers and conditions. Dan?
All right, so if you want to start with topics of interest to Bob McGee, I guess the first condition maybe is the construction management plan, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I'm not sure how we left at the last hearing. We have this standard language that's in section B1B, and I know the applicant wanted to condense this, and how did the board land on that? Do you want to keep this language, or did you want to adjust it?
Page 9.
Page 8.
Is that correct? B1B is page 9?
I had page 8.
Yeah, it's around there. It's on different pages and different versions.
Around
Depends
there.
which version you look at. So this is the requirement that the applicant produces a construction management plan that addresses a laundry list of issues. And I know Bob had made a comment that there needs to be a construction management meeting ahead of time, that we go over these issues. The standard language is that we ask for a plan that checks each box, and it doesn't necessarily mean they have to hire experts to produce dust control plans. It just means that they have to provide a narrative as to what they're proposing to do. And then the people in town, like Bob and the police chief and fire chief and others, can look at this and decide if everything's adequate or not.
I think it's worthwhile keeping because, again, we check the boxes off. It's checks and balances to what's been done. And like Dan said, we don't have to require experts to look at the dust control systems or anything, but we at least know that these are each being looked at, reviewed, and being checked. So I think it's good to keep this level of detail. And some of it can be done in 5 minutes between Bob and Tom, and I think it's worthwhile keeping. Any other opinions?
Has Bob even seen this stuff?
Yes, Bob has seen it.
Have you gone over this, Bob?
I thought it was an F paragraph, 5B6.
That's one coming up, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
This is really for the whole, this actually involves Sean as well, involves, fire chief, all those.
Tom would say.
It's just the level of detail. Tom, did you want to say anything?
I just had two comments. Since we're not going for earth removal, permit or application, we're not asking for a waiver from it. Just under section B1B, Roman numeral 2, just size and specifications of trucks and plans to mark trucks with identification placards. I mean, the construction management plan would just say normal trucks, you would, 10-wheelers, trailers, or whatever else that we'd have for the normal construction. But placards, I just want that eliminated. I don't see any reason to placard trucks coming in and out of there or something. If that's the case, then anybody building a house should placard a truck.
So I think it's also important to understand that this isn't saying you have to do it. This is just saying, what are your plans for doing it? And if your plan is not to do it, then you'd say that. You'd say, this project is not big enough to justify, placarding trucks. But if it's in here, then for every project that comes down the pike, we can consider this each time. And
Doesn't mean we're gonna make you do it. It's just we wanna check the box off when it gets to, when you have that meeting between Bob, Sean, or whoever the consulting engineer is.
And is that the same way with blasting, under that selection of an independent blasting consultant? Because that looks like you have to have an independent blasting consultant.
I mean, your plan would say, we're not gonna hire an independent consultant because we're not planning to blast.
Yep,
And
right.
And if you do have any blasting, then it's requiring it. Does anybody on the board actually been involved with blasting or know what it entails and
Yes.
how they go about it before you actually put these requirements in place?
I think, Tom, when you get to blasting, if you look at those 10 items, it's gonna be you, the police chief, we're gonna have a discussion, you're gonna present what you're gonna do, and we're gonna move forward. I don't think we're not gonna sit here. And, pre and post blast survey, the company you hire to do any blasting is going to do that to protect themselves. So I think again, back to Dan's point, it's just, again, the checklist to make sure we aren't addressing any issues with the buses. road closures, obviously, because this is a one-way in.
The only question, actually, most everything in here is fairly standard
Yeah.
pre and post blast surveys. The only thing is hiring an independent blasting consultant.
What if we just said if required by the fire chief?
Right.
Because if required by the fire chief,
That's
because
fine.
we've already, the board has already decided that we're not gonna regulate blasting through the permit, we're gonna defer to the chief.
Yeah, and I don't think there's gonna be any up here, but if required by the fire chief, that's something different.
There you go. Yep. Any issues with that?
No,
Good?
no, I agree.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm just scrolling down until I see something that might be of interest to Bob, and Bob, if you see something as I'm scrolling and you wanna talk about it, just jump in.
C1 talks about the construction activities prior to commencement of any construction, which, Bob, I think you are actively always involved with. So I think that's in C1.
Oh, yeah, pre-construction meeting, right?
Yep.
Does that work?
So, I kind of following along with how we would do things if it was the planning board, and you're doing the same thing here, I think. So typically what'll happen is, we'll have a construction meeting, we'll invite, just like you said, the fire chief, the police chief, planning board, myself and whoever else, and we'd sit with Tom and we'd go over the drawings, almost like right from the beginning. And, you know, we would, talk about, you'd pretty much have everything in writing. You know, we'd talk about the hours of work, the truck route, a fee for inspections.
Okay.
Pretty much, you know, just, the review and the approval of the drawings wouldn't be challenged at that point. It's just how we're gonna go about a construction plan and what your expectations are, and we'd go right around the table and everybody would bring up their concerns.
Okay.
One of the other things too is, that I don't know how much time you put into it, but when we, part of that construction plan is that would inform the developer owner that he would have to take a street opening permit out, which would be separate from the board's agreement, but also, you're well aware of it, that he's going to, you know, build sidewalks, reclamate the street, that sort of thing. That's done, and a bond would be held with the DPW, a cost estimate for all of that, and so that would occur too. Almost on every project that enters in or comes off the right-of-way.
Okay, I don't think we talked about a bond for the off-site work, did we?
You probably wouldn't here. It's a DPW issue, it's kind of standard.
Yeah.
So he gets halfway through a project and disappears, where's the money to, you know, it's the same as what you'd expect. Surety bond in the amount of, a cost to do the job, which I think I've already done, and if I haven't, it's half done. Because I do it all the time for this type of thing.
Okay. So I guess, you know, the way we structured this, the surety in this whole decision is that that work has to be completed by a certain benchmark of the project. And I think we get to it as we scroll through here, but it's like half the building permits can be issued and then that work has to be done. So we didn't actually impose a bond requirement. He could substitute that kind of performance security for a bond in order to keep pulling building permits. There's an option for that, doing that as well.
I guess that would be a little different. I think, you know, you negotiate this for us, and we much appreciate it, but it's a selectman's type of question and approval, I would think. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. It's all, so you would hold?
Why don't we get, yeah, we'll scroll down. There's actually a whole section that deals with surety, and there's requirements that they have to finish the roads, finish the on-site infrastructure by a certain benchmark date.
Right.
And I think I stuck in there as well that they have to finish the off-site improvements by a certain date, or they can't get any more building permits. And so that's the incentive to.
Right, I'm familiar with what you're talking about.
Okay.
Dan, I got a question on C4. Applicant shall provide permanent central mailbox units. Should we say provide and maintain?
Yeah, we can, but we also have language that the applicant and the successor HOA is responsible for maintaining all the common areas, including the CMUs.
Okay.
So it's already in there.
We're done.
Yeah.
Next one is C20, then affects Bob, which would be the scenic road.
The only thing I'd have here, Chris, if this is what we're talking about, tree removal and a tree hearing, and I don't think there's an issue on the right-of-way other than one dead tree that probably wouldn't require a hearing. That's on Village Green. No other trees, I don't think we have. Maybe going into the entrance, right off of Village Green, there may be a couple of trees there or something, but I think that's all approved with this process.
Yeah, there would be no hearing, because that's subsumed within this, so basically we're saying that you have the authority to review the trees that are proposed to be removed, and if
Is
you're
that within the entrance of the right-of-way, the future right-of-way, is that what you're talking about, or?
no, the right-of-way for Village Green.
Right, okay, yeah.
C23 project will conform to the DPW's requirements for all utility connections, including payment of all fees.
And C27.
So this addresses the issue. I think, Bob, you weren't thrilled with the design of the speed tables
You know,
that
this,
have brick.
just careful what you wish for, that this doesn't become a standard for other subdivisions, which it's really not acceptable. Well, at least at this point, or anywhere in the right-of-way, with the exception of right now, we have some on Everett Street. My problem wasn't so much that, it was that it was the brick inside the speed hump.
Yep.
The speed table.
So this condition just requires them to go to you and get your sign off on what that design will be. And if it's not even a speed table at all, if it's just a crosswalk, that's gonna be your call. I think the idea with the speed table is to slow the cars down, and if that's gonna be an issue with snowplows, then
Yeah, I cannot
We're just leaving it
comment.
up to you to make the call, instead of the ZBA having to.
Well, it is a
do
design change. I would make, whatever call we made that opposes the design, I would review with you. Am I right there?
Can I ask Tom's opinion? Do you think you even still need a speed table with how the design's changed, and you really don't have a straight road for someone to, in my opinion, speed along anymore?
Probably not. You probably don't need it. The crosswalks that were in there with the, bricks or cobbles or anything like that is similar to other projects that we've done. Just gives a nice look and defines the crosswalk a little nicer and things like that. You'll see them up at the Village or River's Edge and other places that we've done. But once again, if it's a public road, it's more work for the town to maintain them. So if they don't want to do them, then that's fine too. We could just paint something across for crosswalks or whatever. But I don't think you need a raised speed table with what we've done with the road and the curves and everything. I think naturally it'll slow down.
Yeah.
Right.
Just something to consider when going through it, is, I think even whether or not you need it.
Okay, so E5 is the HOA, and this simply says that all the common areas will be maintained by the HOA until the roads are transferred over to the town, if the town accepts them. And even then, it's just the road, that the HOA is still responsible for all the other on-site common areas, landscaping, and so forth. They're gonna be responsible for the drainage basins that are off the road. Town will be responsible for anything that's in the street, catch basins. E7 deals with the acceptance of the road, so the applicant cannot request town acceptance until it's obtained a sign-off from the zoning board's consulting engineer certifying that the road's been completed to the design specs that are in the plans.
Just a question, has the board made the inspections of this subdivision is gonna be done by Beta? Is that, how is it, or is that gonna be done by the DPW?
The board's gonna solicit bids and pick a firm to do it.
Okay,
No, it's definitely a firm, it's not DPW.
okay. So when it comes to this road acceptance, then it'll be reviewed by them, you'll get a,
Right.
okay.
F1.
All right, so F1 is the sidewalk on Village Green. They have to provide a sidewalk plan, get your sign off on it. Sound good?
We spent time out there, Tom was with us, unless something's changed from that meeting, I think we've got a good plan
Okay.
going forward.
And then F2 is the reclamation of the street. You want to,
It's a repair method, is, unless somebody needs an explanation, reclamation is a process where, the existing pavement and the gravel underneath it for 12 inches is kind of like chewed up and it's fluffed over and it's regraded. It's kind of like processed on-site. It's probably the best method of reestablishing a sound foundation. In some cases, you can mill and pave if the base is good, but the base is suspect here. So reclamation is the preferred repair method. And that would be done using the same material, probably bringing in another 3 to 4 inches of a 3/4 inch minus to get the final material rolled, compacted. And there's a binder course put on there, and coordinate and then at that time, you probably want to design, get your sidewalk elevations right. Put a sidewalk in at least to a binder time, and I think we're going to work together on the top course when all the heavy trucking is done and out of the way and we don't damage a new product. So I take
Okay,
questions
so-
on that, but
so the language I drafted, it just requires them to use the reclamation process for repairing the street. Or you're gonna get a continuous width of 22 feet. Transitioning from the existing 27-foot wide pavement will be worked out in the field. The scope of reclamation shall adhere to your requirements that you laid out in your memo to the zoning board on April 4th. You gave us, I think, that diagram. And then here's the issue, so the what we proposed was a sidewalk and repaving be done before the issuance of the 24th certificate of occupancy for the market rate units. So. And then as an alternative, this language here, the applicant can provide the town with a performance security in the form of a tri-party agreement, which in my experience works the best in terms of all the financial sureties. So they're gonna have a construction lender, they'll sign a contract with us that says we're gonna hold back however much needs to be held back to complete the job. And that can be reduced if they're halfway done, they wanna get it reduced. F2? F3, there's a requirement for a warning sign. This is something that came out of the traffic peer review. And they have to get your approval of the sign they're gonna install and where they're gonna put it. F1's the sidewalk, F2 is the street. I don't think those changed. So what I did, what this is a red line.
Use the microphone, yeah.
Okay, can I keep this okay. Yeah, I was looking at the one that came over about 2:30. That must not be the latest one or something with that, so, okay.
I might have made a few tweaks, but the differences between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock were very, very minor.
Okay.
What we're looking at here is the red lines that show the difference between the version from April 2nd
Mhm.
and the last version from today.
Okay. So that's the same one that I have then, on that, so that F1 doesn't show doesn't have the tripartite.
Because it's just for the sidewalk.
Okay, so that's F2, and then Village Green, and then the roadway is
I
F2.
think, I might have added the tri-party this afternoon. That
No, F2 has a tripartite.
Okay.
F1 didn't. Okay.
You okay with that, Tom?
Yeah, no, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
This one is F6, I think. It goes along with the F3.
So any stop signs that need to
And
be
stop
put in,
signs, traffic signs.
coordinate with you. Landscaping, open space, doesn't concern you, I don't think.
Actually, I did have, on G2 there, just wanted to be a little bit more specific in the first sentence there. The applicant shall complete the landscaping improvements on the common areas of the site, the right-of-way, and off-site. Only because if I'm building a house, it's tough for me to do the landscaping around a house.
Yeah, I think that was the intent, was not the house-specific landscaping, but the common landscaping, the street trees.
And I'm in agreement with that. I have no
Retaining
problem with
walls.
that. And as long as that's the intent there with the site, or, and it doesn't,
And the other one for G2 was that they wanted 15 Village Green, which you're aware of, that we might
Yeah.
do something there.
Mhm.
That's the property across the street from the entrance to
The
it.
main
Remember,
entrance.
we agreed to actually to help with the lights and things.
yeah, that's,
Do some
so
additional landscaping.
I just would replace site with common areas of the site, the right-of-way, and off-site landscaping. You could do that, or you could just have it exclude the houses, that's all. Which we do the landscaping around the houses when they're finished.
Common areas? That doesn't work.
Acceptable for me to ask a quick question on that?
Sure.
Thank you. Brad Walker, 16 Village Green. So, I'm just speaking on behalf of my neighbor across the street for 15 Village Green. Why would we want to wait until almost the end of the project to take care of the landscaping in front of their house if it could take 4 or 5 years for this project to be completed? Wouldn't we care about the lights that are going in front of his house towards the beginning of the project as well? It doesn't say here that.
Yeah.
The 15.
You're talking about on Village Green?
Yeah, this is, yeah.
That wouldn't harm them to do landscaping.
I mean, we bundled it with the landscaping, just to make it easier, and not make it a separate condition. And I think Tom I've talked to the owner, I think we met with the owner, is how much will be necessary. And we don't know that yet. I mean, if you look at that house right now, he's got a lot of evergreens, he's got some burning bushes and things there. And they're all actually most of them are about 6 to 8 feet high. So I think the issue was maybe as we got towards the end, we would know better what he needed as opposed to adding a bunch of little dogwoods or something, or a couple of rhododendrons and finding out that they're not shielding. So I think that was the reason for the holdup.
That makes sense,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
All right, so you have to complete the common area landscaping improvements and the off-site improvements at 15 Village Green. Does that cover it?
I'm reading, yeah.
Common would include roads, the fieldstone walls, the trees. Good.
Okay, for the moment. I'll wait till we get to the surety, then we may come back.
Okay.
On 5,
Actually, we're trying to get through Bob's, and we'll go back, unless you
okay.
think that's, yeah. I know
I didn't
We got
have
a
any-
little
Yeah, we were gonna start over after Bob
yeah,
leaves.
we're gonna start over and go through it, yeah. We're just trying to get through his so he doesn't have to spend the night. As much as he enjoys us all, I don't think he wants to spend the night with us, so. J1 is the next one we want for? Is there
Actually,
already
did we agree to take out the H8? For some reason I had this stricken, but
one? Say again?
H8, did we agree to take that out?
Same.
Yeah, I think I might have taken that out by mistake.
I think you were in agreement with that, right, Dan? Tom?
Keeping it in?
We just want to make sure the openings are large enough so that Bob can get his machine in there.
This refers to mostly the storm separators and, vortex systems.
No, it's the catch basins so that you can get your,
The catch basins are typical, that's not, but they come to sometimes a storm scepter that needs to be cleaned out.
right.
And a lot of them have swirl chambers and stuff, and they need to be backed out. We'd like to see a specification that will allow for clamshell to clean it.
Actually, if you could provide us with what type of model that you prefer so that we can have that installed, that'd be fine with it.
Yeah.
But-
It does the same thing, it conforms to the stormwater regulations. I can clean it for $12 as opposed to
Mhm.
$1,500.
Yep. Just if you can, if you want to email that over to me, that'd be perfect.
All right, so we'll leave this condition in there.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so now we're in section J, right? I mean, I don't know how much of this Bob cares about,
Yeah,
but we can, do
me.
you wanna go through it, or?
Just, yeah, go through A, just so he sees it.
All right. So I modified the surety requirements. So the way it's written now is that no more than 20 building permits shall be issued, and no occupancy permits issued until the initial infrastructure is completed. So it's the basin binder coat of the road. It does not include the final coat, doesn't include the sidewalks or the berm or the grass strips. But it would include all the utilities, the stormwater management facilities that are on the plan. So that's consistent with the way we handled Rockwood. It's also consistent with pretty much every permit that I draft. It's usually like halfway through the project, you want that infrastructure done. Except for the stuff that you want to wait to the end. So,
Only question I have on that that exclude the drainage facilities for, I think you have separate drainage facilities for the houses, right? Does this separate the requirements for the houses?
I don't think you do, do you?
You mean the roof drainage?
Yeah, I can't remember on the latest.
Yeah, we asked for a waiver on that for the roof drainage so that it could be combined.
Oh, it's all combined now?
Yep.
Okay. Originally, it was
Correct.
separated.
Yes, it was separate because I think that was mandated in the bylaws or something with
Yeah.
that.
And then section B is, everything needs to be finished before the 26th occupancy permit, or 27th occupancy permit for the market rate units. Still accepting the final coat of pavement if that hasn't gone through a final winter season.
Which I think is pretty standard for you, right, Bob? We go 1 year for base coat.
Yeah, well, typically, it depends on, so typically what you do is we have a Form K that we follow, and it pretty much sequences the construction for building of any subdivision. So typically what you do is you bring in your, you cut your trees, you stump, you go in, you subgrade, you bring in your water and your electricity and all that stuff goes in the ground, you put your binder course down, you make sure that your drainage is working, and at that point, I think typically what we do is put a cost to complete together, and that allows Tom to go off the binder and start building his houses. So you get to that, I think you got it laid out there pretty accurately.
Well, that's the next paragraph. So he can do that. He can
Yeah.
get out from under this and do a tri-party agreement.
Exactly, yeah.
And just as a reminder, there's a total of 30 market rate units, so this is the 26th. So 27, 28, 20. So we're stopping it right before you can have 4 more market rate units. And then, yeah, section C is the tri-party agreement alternative. Based upon the cost that the consulting engineer will tell us would be the cost for the town to finish the work if the town had to go in and do it. So did you have a chance to look at this afternoon? No, this did not change. And this is what we did, we've done this in Rockwood and other towns, so. And then the final benchmark is no more than 36 occupancy permits until everything is done. So at that point, the board has some leverage so that what we're seeing right now on the project we just talked about, if there's remaining work to be done, then you're not gonna get your final lots sold until that work's done. J2, I think this was actually a new provision I put in there, and I think we had this in Rockwood, and I thought that it seemed like a good idea to keep in this decision as well. Just requiring you to produce your CAD drawings so that the consulting engineers can have the electronic versions to look at your final product. J3 was the stabilization bond. I don't think there's anything significant there that changed. And that would be it for the conditions, and then the waivers.
I don't think there's much for Bob, yeah.
Do you wanna?
Any concerns, Bob, other than?
Just wonder, through what we learned in the pre-construction meeting, if there were to be any changes to this, the procedure would be to consult with you first, make some marks, mark it up, or
If there's any changes to.
there's a couple of minor things in here that through experience I know Tommy may disagree, but you're talking about loom borders not being In other words, when you're building a subdivision, you have your binder down, your binder course, and it's on grade and it's on level. Well, that reflects the height of the sidewalk, and a lot of times what happens if the sidewalk is just an afterthought, the sidewalk, driveways come to the sidewalk, to the street, and the street doesn't come to the driveway, if you know what I'm saying. So if you got an elevation of a street, the sidewalk's this height, it follows the street around an elevation and it doesn't change. And I like to see the loom strip be loomed and seeded. You can put a little dribble berm on the asphalt because a lot of people are, depending on the grade, are worried about the washout. But every time you don't have a loom strip there and it's a great erosion control, we're chasing soils down the street, and he's one of the better contractors I've ever worked with, but there are contractors that I'll see him in 2 weeks, and I'm end up there cleaning it up. So there's a couple things I'd like to see have done in the sequence of construction, and it would be again, I'd have to look at this 3 times to see that if we get the same thought going. But it's something that we can work out together because I don't know that we need it in writing.
I think that will take care of in the construction management meeting. And I don't think it needs ZBA review. Again, I think you can work it out with the consulting engineer
Right.
plus the developer.
Yeah, I think the way this is written is that the sidewalk has to be constructed at the same pace and time as the road. So,
It's not a time factor, it's an elevation factor. I just want to, unless there's houses are sometimes plotted this way, but then you find them turned that way, it's not on the drawing, so the driveway changes, the sidewalk isn't in, so the driveway comes at a steeper incline. Now the sidewalk has to dive or rise to meet it. It's kind of like a boring subject, but it comes out nice in the end when the sidewalk follows the elevation consistent with the street. Hard for you to see it, and
Yeah.
I understand, but.
right.
Yeah, I do understand what Bob's saying with that, and in typically a new subdivision and everything, yeah, that's definitely the way to do it. The only, with existing houses, it could be difficult sometimes on that, because unless you're gonna go on private property to repave their driveways, and then you could have you could actually have a sidewalk that's higher in elevation than a garage floor and trapping water on a driveway instead of draining out into the street. I think what that's Bob is alluding to on that, but if you have it all at the same height, which is really the right way to do it on a sidewalk, but you have existing structures there, so there's probably gonna be some field decisions in there. Is that what you mean?
One of the things you can do is you build a street and you stake the driveway where it's gonna be with an elevation on it. And how that driveway gets there is kinda like your problem. Because if you have the sidewalk, because transition means a lot to a ride going into a driveway. But if you turn the house and the driveway all of a sudden comes over here and it's a little bit more steeper over there, you might have the driveway come down. And what you wanna do is bend the sidewalk a little bit to make it a smooth ride. In the regulations and in the construction world and the engineering world, what you do is you have the sidewalk go along as it should and find a way to get to it with grade. Now, that doesn't mean you can't change it a little bit, but quite often, you know, it's at the landscape type of time of construction that the driveway goes in. So.
Yeah. And
again,
you don't want to delay the construction of the sidewalk. I mean, that would, in order to avoid that, you're saying delay the construction of the sidewalk until you have the driveways built?
No, just have a grade that won't change, so you can put a stake in the ground. So as part of the inspection, what I wanna see is control out there. I wanna see a center line all the time. I don't want it to disappear, and you know, I wanna make sure that the utilities, because too many times, electricity, the conduit, all the telecom type things are supposed to go under the sidewalk, ends up under the grass strip. I'm not drifting at all, and then all of a sudden you can't plant a tree. So you wanna have control out there all the time. You wanna know the height of the sidewalk, where it's where the driveway is located. It can change, but it should conform with the elevation of the street. And if there's a little bit of change and it's reasonable, not a problem. But a lot of times, we're trying to satisfy, you know, the developer will come in, do his infrastructure, sell the house lots, and that guy has no idea what's going on until he starts to put the driveway in it, and then I have to make the change to suit him.
Are we talking about inside the project, Bob, or Village Green? Because inside the project, I 100% agree with you.
Well, inside the project.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I thought you were talking about Village Green, because that's, yeah.
Inside the project.
Yep, okay.
That sounds like a construction management issue that can be dealt with.
Would you make condition A1 that Bob is in charge? No, thanks. Anything else, Bob?
No, other than our part, you know, inspecting the water, so if Beta's out there looking at it, whoever's doing the inspections.
Right.
Water's a different animal. We need to have lay eyes on that. We need to, you know, make sure that we're monitoring the pressure test and the chlorination, the lay of the pipe, the, you know, the whole jetting and backfilling and stuff like that. He's the best in the business. I'm not very worried, but 7 other contractors can make mistakes.
The water line down Village Green is deeper than what we'll be reclamating, correct? It should be.
How did you know that? Is it?
I don't, that's what I'm wondering. Is
No.
that gonna be a problem, or?
Sometimes there's reasons for it to be low, but usually the standard is at 5 to 6 feet under pavement.
So it shouldn't be an issue in this case? You don't think?
Nothing
Yeah.
I know of, no.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob. You're welcome to stay. No, thanks for coming, we appreciate it for both.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks, Bob. All right, now
All
you're
right.
gonna start back at the beginning.
Sure.
Okay.
So, have folks had a chance to look at the findings? I know I drafted those kind of late today. Do you want to run through them now, or?
You guys have a chance to look at them yet, or no?
I haven't, but we can plow through them if you want.
Take a few minutes. Do you want to address, I think it's your property that you can do some little bit of swapping of, getting some land, correct? Do you want to address that? Do you want us to address that? Because Dan has included that. Is that what you're concerned with? Or I know you're concerned with the whole project, but I know that's a particular concern to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, from talking with Tom, it sounded like once this project was approved, that we would be signing something formally with the Registry of Deeds, is my impression, that would formally deed the, sorry.
Take a break.
So obviously, this is the first time that I've been involved with this, so I don't know what the process usually is. But obviously, you know, we all have a great relationship with Tom. You know, he's worked with us, and he's told me that after this process of approving the project is complete, that the next logical step after that would be that we would be, I think it was, he said, go to the Registry of Deeds, and we would formally be deeding the land over. Is that what legal counsel would recommend is in my best interest?
Yeah, so there's language in the decision that says that the applicant may deed over the 400 square feet of land that would go to you. The board can't require him to do that because there's no public benefit to that. It's not really our game. It's something between you and Tom. And so we're not requiring him to do it. That's something that you can negotiate with him directly if you want. But the condition allows him to deed over that property to you.
But is the board concerned that I don't otherwise I wouldn't currently have a conforming lot without deeding over property? Is that not a concern either?
Board hasn't, I don't think, even looked at that issue. So that's not, again, that's something that concerns your property, not the project site. So if you have a zoning nonconformity issue, that's independent of this process.
Dan, can we put anything in there with regard to making sure this is done, this agreement between them in the appeal period, or can't we even, in the next 21 days or whatever, can we put anything in there that this should take place in the next 21 days or something, the agreement between these two parties? Or can't we?
Well, it's,
I don't have a problem with shall, if that's put in instead of may. I mean, you're not gonna have an appeal from me or something like that or anything else. I know that the town cannot force it, but there's not a problem with it if you wanted to do it.
I'd rather not put in, I'd rather not have the board be the one to tell you to do it. I think I'd rather have you sign a contract with him and you agree to do it. I mean, I'm assuming there's probably an agreement that you're not gonna appeal the permit, right?
I'm not appealing anything, but there's been no agreement either.
Gotta get a mic.
But
Yeah.
I guess my suggestion would be you could have a piece of paper that says, you're not gonna appeal the permit, Tom's gonna deed over the land to you. And just make it that simple. John will draft it for you.
That sounds great. So we're going to wrap up about 11 o'clock, and we'll take care of that in the parking lot?
Well, there is a there's a appeal period, so if it wasn't done, he would have the right to appeal
Yeah.
the decision that the board agrees to or doesn't.
Or you can just have sign a one-page contract that says he shall do it, and if he doesn't do it, then
Okay.
you have some rights. I'd rather not have the board be involved, because it's really between two private property owners, and it's,
Tom?
So it sounds like this is something that we need to talk about offline?
Yes, I'll talk to Jim and see if we can draft something simple up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Did you guys get a chance to look at the findings? That's why we had that little off-site meeting here, so you guys had time to read.
I was watching the offsite meeting.
Huh?
I was listening to the offsite meeting.
Do you want to recess for 5 minutes, or?
Yeah,
You want it? I mean,
you wanna take,
what do we have to do to go, what are we going through tonight on this? Every single one of these again?
we're just gonna go through the
Changes.
changes in the comprehensive permit and the waivers, and Dan just provide finding of facts, so he wanted to know if we want, do we wanna take a few minutes to look at them? Okay, Chris, can we take another 3-minute recess? Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back to the zoning board of appeals meeting for April 24th. We'll continue with the enclave. Dan, you're going to continue with the comprehensive permit.
Okay, so, to recap, I drafted some findings of fact. Every good decision should have some findings, to support the conditions. So, I'm not gonna read them. If folks have questions or comments, you don't like my language, you wanna tone it down, tone it up. I mean, the first section, just so you know, is really just procedural history. Laying out the dates of the hearing, the projects in the R1 district. We've got 80 feet of frontage. We hired peer reviewers. We got the names of the members who are sitting on the panel. Actually, was Medora on the panel? Was Medora on this panel?
Yes.
Okay. She's not here tonight, though.
No, but we're all right. We're still open up.
So we make a finding that the jurisdictional requirements have been satisfied. The original project was 56 units with 28 buildings. In October of 2018, the applicant proposed 2 alternative designs, 44 units and 40 units.
Actually, partway down, like the second, where it says the buildings are set back at least 25 feet apart, looks like there's something missing there on that. Should be like setback 25 feet, and then I think it just looks like there's something missing there.
Right here?
Yeah.
The buildings are set back at least 25 feet apart.
Yeah, I think they were supposed to be 25 feet apart, and I think it was, I forget what the setback was. We'd have to look at the waivers there. It looks like you should have another dimension in there. This is the first time I just saw it.
Maybe setback is not the right word, but the concept here is that you've got 25 feet between buildings.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that would be the concept. If the buildings are at least 25 feet apart, just take setback out. Maybe that's what the problem is.
yeah, sure. I make a finding that the applicant is proposing to construct the nature trail across the wetlands to Juniper Road. The roadway is proposed to be conveyed to the town. The applicant will plant street trees. And then I have some specific headers for some findings, traffic and public safety. We talk about how the 56-unit project would have had a deleterious effect on the level of service at the intersection of Cleveland and Rockwood. But then that was corrected when the trip generation statistics were corrected. The density was reduced, so that reduced the impacts on that intersection. The subdivision rules and regs, there's a few nonconformities. Those are mitigated through the reduction in the density of the project and through the improvements on Village Green. Density and design. The original 56-unit design had significant shortcomings. John, you okay with that?
Yes, I saw that.
Okay. So we talk about how we didn't like the first project, and then we talk about how the revised 40-unit plan is an improvement. Okay. Open space. And then we just get into the conditions, which we've talked about. So I'll just scroll through until we get to
Go through the ones that we've changed, yeah.
major ones, okay. Section A11, I just plugged in the plan references, so I think we have now the final set of site plans, architectural plans, and the wetland crossing exhibit. And I don't believe there are any other plans or exhibits. We eliminated the requirement that they have to get an updated water system impact analysis. Sean had advised that it's really unnecessary, given that they're reducing the size and the scope of the project. The escrow language, we changed that last time, and then you asked me to wordsmith it, and so this is the product of that. So the way this is gonna work is that they have to fund the escrow account, but first, the board is gonna solicit quotes from engineering firms to do the consulting engineering work. You don't have to go with the lowest bidder. Once we have a selected consulting engineer with a quote in terms of the estimated fees, then 25% of that will be deposited into the escrow account. Any issues with that language?
Comment? No?
We tweaked the language for the security at the front entrance. We did that last time. Hours, we settled on the
Yep.
hours.
The hours, we incorporated the interior starting at 7 on a Saturday, exterior at 8 o'clock.
Okay. So, see,
Roads, I just added the applicant and its successors are responsible for road maintenance until the roads are adopted or accepted by the town. C15, I just added above ground to clarify. I just tweaked the language of C16 to make it more clear. We eliminated these blasting conditions last time. C20, the tree warden is gonna be the one to review the trees. C24, fieldstone shall be used for retaining walls that are visible from abutting properties. We agreed last time that a retaining wall on the southern side of Road A can be constructed of other materials. But I put in language there, other materials as approved by the zoning board, just so it's not something completely off wall. Let's see. Age restriction, I don't think there's any changes here. Talked about those last time. D4? Oh, I see, yeah, something should come out. Okay, was the board okay with the second option, option B?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we discussed
okay?
last, that's what we discussed last time.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Granny.
E2 is the provision we just talked about. Applicant may convey the 486 square foot parcel of land. If the road is formally accepted by the town as a public way, then the HOA shall be relieved of its responsibility to maintain the trail to Juniper Road. We talked about that last time, so if the road is conveyed, then the trail is conveyed, and the town is responsible for the trail, right?
Tom, with regards to the trail and the boardwalk, where do you stand with the Conservation Commission on that?
We were there about 2 weeks ago, and it went very well. The plan that we showed the ZBA here prior to that Conservation Commission meeting was well received, and they liked the fact that light could pour through the decking, and that would reduce the amount of disturbance and everything. And it went very well. I don't think there'll be any problems moving forward with that. Really, the last thing would just be ESP there, just to get their blessing with it as well. So how this is moving forward is that we continued the Conservation Commission hearing until this is closed, and then once Bowler actually starts all their revisions and everything else that are mandated under this permit, we'll revise the plans, submit them back to you for your final review, and then actually submit those plans to Conservation so that all the plans that the town have are all the same, so that we don't have a commission permit, a ZBA permit, and everything's brought to final approval together with a final set of documents.
All right.
Yep.
E7, this just deals with the logistics of accepting the road as a public way. The applicant can't request acceptance until it's gotten sign off that the road's complete and constructed in accordance with the plans. The sign off is from the consulting engineer. F1 and F2 we've already talked about.
Jen, did we include in there the bridge? Do you have anything in there for the bridge, when it would be built, completed by?
Yeah, it's,
Do you have it
I think it's further down.
further down, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's G2. I think we get there.
G4.
All right, and to recap on the surety provisions for landscaping, G1 says that the landscaping has to be completed. Actually, take that back. G1 says that the landscaping plan has to be submitted to the zoning board prior to the issuance of the 21st occupancy permit for the residential units in the project. And then G2 says that the applicant shall complete the common area landscaping prior to the issuance of the 37th occupancy permit, and that if that doesn't work, they can bond it. G4 imposes that restriction on the open space, no improvements or structures allowed in the open space except for the boardwalk trail.
And a comment on G5, just the end of it there. Basically, though, it says the walking trail to the town shall be, let's see, go back here. Too much paperwork here. Top of the page, right where it ends, it says, basically, should allow for public access. I just wanted to add, once the streets are accepted by the town of Norfolk as public ways. That has to do with providing an easement over the area.
Where are you, Tom?
G5,
At the end?
a sentence. The last sentence says, subject to obtaining all the applicable permits and approvals, the applicant shall convey an easement over to the walking trail to the town of Norfolk in a form acceptable to town council to allow for public access once the streets are accepted by the town of Norfolk as public ways.
So you're just adding something to the end. You're just adding something to the end of this.
That's all. I don't know if that's a proper place to put it, but, you know.
Well, I think that, I think everyone's anticipating those roads to be accepted, but if for some reason they're not, I thought that we still wanted the public access on the trail.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're completed and everything's done accordingly, which it will be, I just didn't want it turned down at town meeting for some reason. And then all the people in the neighborhood are bound to maintain the trail and pick up everybody's trash and everything else, and they have, you know, they've given up their right and their privacy. If it's a public easement, then, you know, to the benefit of the public, then it should be a public road going in there.
Yeah, I guess he has a point. I mean, if the roads are private,
Right.
then
It sounds
it's a trail to
reasonable.
nowhere because
Right.
you're not allowed to be on the roads.
Right.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
No, that's fine.
makes sense, I guess.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Then you have the ability to publicly walk through the whole project
Yeah.
on the public roads and the trail.
Okay.
That's fine.
And Chris will be the first person to walk it, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
You have on that one, go back up. You have, where are you? Applicant shall convey an easement over the walking trail. Over the walking trail?
Mhm. Yeah,
Over the walking trail? Seems a strange way.
an easement over the trail.
Yeah.
How would you word it?
Easement to include the walking
Easement.
trail?
I get over, okay, over the walk, okay, I get you, over the walking trail. Sounds funny.
Over the trail?
Over the river and through the woods? There you go.
Yeah.
Grandmother's house we
Easement-
go, man.
Easement has to accommodate the walking trail, basically, is that correct?
Yeah, I think of it as a, it's a restriction.
Of the walking,
It's a-
I would say of, but to me, over, you're not walking over the walking trail, you're on the walking trail, but that's all right, that's fine.
No, but the
Well, we-
easement is over.
I'm not gonna correct your wordsmithing,
We have
no,
a
that's
hazard
good.
duty right now.
I just read, I went over the walking trail, what is over the walking trail?
Yeah, it's gonna be a certain height above. You have air rights.
Yeah, John didn't catch that. I don't know, I don't know, it's fine, I know another way.
I don't think it matters semantic wise.
That just
I
was
could
a
say
funny,
for-
I just looked at one, what is that?
Easement for the walking trail. All right.
Take care of all the hovercrafts.
Hmm?
Take care of all the hovercrafts.
H4, this is just the language that we worked on last time on stormwater. H8, we just restored. Now we're in the affordability section.
I just, one comment, you may want to delete I3D. I just don't think it applies to an age-restricted development.
Where's that?
What'd you say, I3B?
I3D.
D.
I mean, you could have a 55-year-old with a high school kid, I don't know, I mean, it's. True. That's a good point. All right, we'll take out D.
Yeah, it doesn't apply.
That was my last comment.
I'm gonna hold you to that. All right, so I7, this is a new language. This comment came up at the last meeting. It was Sue who raised the concern that the affordable units be scattered and not clustered together. So this imposes a requirement that a plan be provided to the zoning board at the same time they provide the regulatory agreement for us to review. And the plan will show the locations of the affordable units, and then if it's scattered, then we sign off. We don't have the discretion to tell them which lots to use. It's just the only purpose of the review is just to ensure conformity with this requirement.
Should that say, Dan, the last line in that, should set until the lot, is it lotting plan or is it the lottery plan? Is it lotting plan?
Lotting, I mean,
Okay.
that's my terminology, but.
Okay. Just wanna make sure you know we read it.
All right, and then we made a change for the, or I put in the language for the ratio, and now I can't find it. Where did I stick that? I think it's on a different draft. Bear with me for a second, I gotta find this new language.
Take a break for a minute, or are you?
No, it's right here, I have to copy and paste this over.
Okay.
Just give me a second.
Is there a copy and paste course in law school? Just wondering.
Are you suggesting he missed that class?
He might have been up late the night before and missed that class.
Okay, so this is, this addresses the issue that we talked about this afternoon, to ensure that the affordable units get built on the same schedule as the market rate units, so that there isn't a glut of market rate units built, and then we're left with all the affordables at the end. So the regulatory agreement, the standard form regulatory agreement for these projects requires that the developer maintain a construction schedule where there's no more than 3 market rate units until there's an affordable unit. So that ratio has to be maintained throughout the course of the project. So I'm building in similar language into condition I-7. The affordable units shall be constructed on a schedule that provides for the construction of at least 1 affordable unit for every 3 market rate units. And then provided that under no circumstances may more than 4 certificates of occupancy be issued for a market rate unit until at least 1 certificate is issued for an affordable unit. So that theoretically should control for the situation where we've got a lot of market rate buildings constructed and finished without the commensurate number of affordable units.
Dan, did we not have that language in this project up here, the Meeting House, the one that we talked about today?
We
don't know.
we don't.
We don't have that.
We don't.
This language is not, because you didn't draft that.
No.
No, that was actually drafted by not even an attorney, that woman actually, it was Jay Talman, I think.
Yeah, a long
drafted that.
time ago.
A long time ago. That was before I was on the board.
Was that,
Okay, I was on the board then.
was that the
yeah.
Borelli project?
Yes,
Yeah.
the
That was
Burley
Borelli's
project, right,
project.
right.
That's right,
Yeah.
that's Borelli's project.
No, the real question is this language in the other projects we've done with you?
I think similar language was in Rockwood.
Okay.
Yeah,
Prior to
yep.
that.
But this is a proper boilerplate for us.
Mhm.
Yeah, it should, yep.
No, this is
Yes.
good.
It should have been in here from the start. I'm not sure why it didn't get stuck in, but it's,
And it helps us avoid
It's a good
what we
catch.
had to discuss with them tonight, so.
all right, so I'm gonna make sure that this is all consistent and works. This is language, this sentence here, Tom, was language that we had in Rockwood, that if an individual with a disability wins the lottery, that you have to ensure that the unit's accessible. Is that an issue? Or is that, you might be required to do that, I'm not sure, under the.
If someone did win the lottery that was, had a disability, I mean, we do everything we can to
I mean, it's just door
build,
openings.
build
and
a, build a unit that would be,
Right.
that would accommodate them, with that, but if they happen to win, something for a unit that was already up, you know, I wouldn't wanna have to go back and retrofit it, that's my only concern.
Mm.
The ranch units are actually pretty accommodating, they would probably work very well.
The unit's adaptable? What does that mean?
Some handicap adaptions are very elaborate too, depending on what goes on inside the house too, right? If the person
How does
needs
the
that-
board,
Huh?
I'm sorry, how do you feel about this concept at
Well,
all?
what,
Is it
what's,
something-
what would be more of a standard for this? Do you, has this?
Can you bring it up a little bit? I can't see
Yeah.
the line. I see the bottom there.
Oh, up top?
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Well, I need down below, on page, what would be page 30? If an individual, a physical disability member of household is selected to purchase an affordable through the lottery, shall ensure the unit is fully acceptable and didn't recognize, what is that? And What's the issue?
Cost. If the unit's already been built
We
and it
know
doesn't,
that.
it doesn't have wide enough doors.
Yeah, I mean, generally the ranches and what we do at the age restricted, they have little wider doors and there's some subtle differences compared to, you know, normal construction that just makes it more accessible for people to age in place. But if I had a unit up, I wouldn't want to have to retrofit it. I mean, I would do something starting from beginning and do something. Because there'll probably be more than one lottery with this project. There'll probably be 2, I'm guessing, at least.
What if we said shall provide an affordable unit? That is fully accessible to the extent, to the extent feasible.
Do people with handicaps, severe handicaps, are they directed to apply to these types of developments? Or are they directed to different types of developments specifically designed for people with severe handicaps?
I mean, anyone can apply for a lottery. You
They
can't-
can?
So, I mean, they're not restricted from applying in this lottery, and that's.
But,
that's right.
but if somebody has a handicap and applies, is there a presumption that somehow they'll be accommodated for that handicap?
I don't believe so. I don't think he has to do it. I mean, unless there's something in the regs that govern his loan program that I'm not aware of.
Well, that's why I'm saying, you know, that perhaps if this situation occurs, then we comply with what is required under the law. Rather than going there, the additional step for a cost that we can't quantify.
It makes
I'm
sense.
not trying to be unfair.
Yeah,
it's
right.
just-
Yeah, because there's some pretty extensive accommodations depending on the person's situation. Could be like, you know, everything right down to the way the bathroom's configured.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, so I mean,
Yeah.
but that would be a normal hurdle if,
I mean, that's a big undertaking.
right, and that's something that someone, if they were buying a house, they'd have to make those accommodations at the time they bought their house.
And I know there are housing, I don't know what you call them, housing developments or things, or apartment buildings that do have those types of facilities, and they're in kind of high demand. It's hard to get one.
Right, I mean, counter heights are different,
Right,
I mean, all
all
types
that
of stuff
stuff,
could be
yeah.
different.
In my opinion, I personally think we should just strike that. I feel if there's any requirements in the law, I think I would defer to whatever's in there and not try and include that in this decision.
And I really can't articulate what would happen in that circumstance, but I'm sure that the lottery agent who manages this process would understand and would understand the obligations in that particular circumstance. It's not that Tom wouldn't go the extra step, it's just that it's hard to quantify what that extra step would be over and above what would otherwise be required by the laws. That's all, it's just not quantifiable.
I mean, could you say that the applicant would, if you're not gonna strike it, the applicant would do follow all requirements applicable by law,
As may be required.
as may be required by law? Yeah, right down,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that makes the most sense.
If required by law. Yeah. I mean, I think it says that, really.
Does that work?
Yeah, if required by law.
Okay.
Okay, and then the rest of the paragraph, the affordable units shall be scattered randomly. We talked about this already.
The subsidizing agency makes the final call in terms of the.
Well, yeah, it's if required by
Looking for microphone.
the program.
She's looking for microphone.
Sorry.
We're getting the hook back there from Chris.
Okay. Sorry, so that covers the ratio issue. Now we're back to surety, section J. We've talked about it, but,
Right. Do you have where'd you say you had the bridge? I couldn't, is the bridge in there?
oh yeah, let's make sure it's here. We talked about that this afternoon. I'm not sure if I could put it or not.
Dan, can we address something that we talked about before?
Mhm.
In terms of, sort of in the senior housing context, as opposed to the unrestricted context for affordable, or for these types of ownership projects.
John,
Some-
can you talk up to the link?
Yeah, sometimes it's difficult for folks, especially with respect to age-restricted housing, to qualify. And so one way to deal with that in the event of a sort of, for example, if you run a lottery and you don't have folks who are qualified to purchase the property, in some circumstances, and I've dealt with this in other cases with age-restricted projects, that the applicant would have the ability to rent on a short-term basis, up to 18 months, or, for example, no more than 2 or 3 or 4 units in that circumstance, because to a person who would otherwise qualify for an affordable unit. It's just, I've run into a lot of circumstances, and I'm not saying it'll happen here. It's just that there could be a circumstance where where you're building out, and all of a sudden you're not able to sell some of those affordable senior housing units. And I've run into that in a number of circumstances, in which case there would be an allowance, I mean, subject to mass housing approval, to allow for temporary rental of those affordable units if they could not be sold immediately until the market returns.
Yeah, we talked about that. I assumed you guys wouldn't have a problem if they couldn't find buyers for the affordable units, so that they could rent them to the same people, income qualified people, until a buyer can be found. It's not a permanent thing, it'll be a temporary thing.
No problem. Any problem?
Nope, nope.
All right, so
Okay.
do you want us to put some language to that effect, John?
Sure, so for example, I guess,
Microphone.
I'm off today.
If a,
In the circumstance where an affordable, a purchaser of an affordable unit cannot be, let me think about that a second.
You're getting paid by the word again tonight.
It's a long night last night.
What if an applicant, if
You
an
wanna take a
applicant-
minute to draft it,
Well-
or in your mind, or?
I mean,
It
what I,
really-
you know, in the circumstance that an affordable unit, a purchaser of an affordable unit, the purchaser cannot be located for an affordable unit. The applicant shall have the right to rent such affordable unit for a term of no longer than 18 months. And that collectively, that no more than 4 units can be rented at any one time within the project.
Would that applicant have to meet the same criteria as a purchaser? It's just that they're not in the position, for example, maybe to afford a down payment or something like that, I guess what I'm trying to do is distinguish the difference between somebody that is renting an affordable housing unit versus somebody who can't qualify otherwise.
So you're talking about renting at an affordable rate?
You know, I'm just,
rental rate.
you know, how does somebody qualify to rent an affordable housing
Reading
unit?
it there.
Is it the same criteria?
At one point, you say lease up above, then you go to rent, is that this, you're basically making them synonymous? You say
Maybe-
applicant may lease the affordables, right?
You got me.
Huh?
You got me.
Ah, oh, one time, right? It's only taken 18 months, right?
Dan, is there a way to, how do you ensure that the unit goes back into the lottery after those, I guess, prior to those 18 months of leasing being up? So at like months, 16 of being leased, does it go back to lottery? Or is that,
Or does it ever come out? Does it ever come out of the lottery?
I wouldn't recommend getting into the weeds that deeply in this. I mean,
Okay.
I think we gotta just rely on some good faith with the applicant, the subsidizing agency. If this becomes a problem and he's renting out all these units, we're gonna go to the subsidizing agency or the applicant, obviously, and suggest, look, this is not what this decision says, and you need to remedy it.
Okay.
In Meeting House, what we just talked about earlier, there's actually 3 units up there being rented. And all 3 are gonna be converted to ownership. So it's been a pretty seamless,
oh, okay.
pretty, seamless
You
process.
suggest 18 months? Or?
Yeah.
The ones up at Meeting House, is that, are they Chapter 40B up there as well? That
Yes.
are being, were the affordables being rented up there?
Yes.
Okay. That- I mean, it's not my first choice to rent them, I'd rather sell them.
I think one of the 3
Yeah.
is an affordable, not all 3, one of the 3.
The problem you have with the age restricted, though, it's a limited market to begin with, because you're over 55, and then to get somebody to qualify, it's a very narrow range. They can't have too many assets. Fortunately, at that point in time, people 55 and over usually have more assets than what's allowed in that situation. If they don't have enough, then they usually can't qualify to pay a mortgage or make a down payment. So it's a very narrow window. So sometimes it takes longer to actually qualify for an age-restricted unit. This is why we're looking for a little bit of relief here with this. If it was not an age-restricted unit, I've had no problems being able to market the, basically, we've always been ahead, of delivering affordable units for ones that aren't age-restricted. The problem is if you start having 4, 5, 6 of these sitting, it actually can affect financing. It can affect now, you're paying property taxes on it, paying utilities in the winter, and there becomes a lot of cost just to stay in compliance with this permit, with everything. Now, we're building duplexes, so, one half would always be finished, the other half might be affordable. You'd always have the shell completed and everything else. I mean, worst case scenario is that you bring the unit to a point where it can be delivered in 30 days, where you just finish out the inside, if there isn't a buyer or something like that. But that's the predicament. You're dealing with a very narrow market with the age-restricted affordables. And sometimes it takes longer for them to sell, and I just didn't want to have a lot sitting in inventory.
And I'd just keep in mind that, Mass Housing is gonna have to approve this happening, so that's an additional belt and suspenders mechanism to ensure that the language is acceptable to them.
Mhm.
And they could include something in the regulatory agreement with respect to that.
And we talked about that. After this is signed and filed, you're gonna run this language by Mass Housing and ask them specifically if they're okay with this language, right? And if,
We might run that by them tomorrow.
right, and if there's an issue.
We have a draft.
If there's an issue with it, they can come back
For a
and
decision.
modify it.
Okay.
But I think that's a sensible
Yep.
solution to,
Yep.
in balancing our interest in getting these affordable units done on time and not at the end. Okay.
Makes sense.
All right,
Okay.
so we got that issue. So you're okay with this language, John?
I guess,
Microphone, John.
my apologies, Mr. Chairman.
It's slipping, slipping.
I would say the applicant shall provide an affordable unit, meeting accessible requirements as may be required by law.
Okay.
That's gonna be required.
Yep. Section J? Okay,
And then a bridge.
so yeah, where's the bridge? No, it wasn't in G2.
G4. The bridge, he's
No,
about
we
the,
wanna make sure when the bridge gets built.
The deadline
Oh.
for the
Yeah,
bridge.
we don't wanna wait till the end for the bridge if we can avoid that.
So,
I'd like to get that done towards the middle of the project.
so this, you and I just talked about this.
Hmm?
You and I just talked about
Yeah.
this on my ride down. Okay, so I don't think it's in here yet.
Okay.
So we wanna make it as, actually, Rich suggested halfway through,
Yes,
so,
The Christopher Weeder Memorial Bridge.
that's right. Emphasis on Christopher.
Memorial.
What's that?
Memorial means he's not here with us.
That may be one, that may be the case after being selected.
Excellent thinking.
okay, so I'm sticking into J1A, which is
Mhm.
what's required halfway through the building permit cycle.
Okay,
Is that good?
great.
Okay, so just to recap, make sure we've got this right. Most of the infrastructure has to be done after the issuance of 20 building permits. Then the next benchmark is no more than 26 occupancy permits can be issued for market rate units before all the infrastructure is completed. And the only exception there is the final coat of pavement. The caveat is that additional occupancy permits can be issued if the applicant signs a tri-party agreement with his lender and gives the town the right to recover essentially a holdback amount to finish the infrastructure if necessary. So. And then finally, everything has to be done before the last 4 houses are sold. We've talked about J2 and J3 amendments. And that's it for the conditions. All right, so I can plug in these names later. I can plug in these names later. Waivers, did you have a chance to go through the final draft?
We've had our engineer
Close
review
call,
them.
John.
I know. Thank you, sir. I didn't see anything in the waivers that deviated from what we had discussed the last time. I mean,
Yeah, I just
formatting
accepted,
issues, yeah.
all I did was accept the red line edits. I didn't make any substantive changes. I just made some formatting changes. So, I don't know if you wanna
good.
So the question is, do you wanna finalize this tonight, sign it, and,
Think about that for a minute, John.
I think close the public hearing.
Okay.
Make sure there's no comments. Then you're gonna, maybe we'll take a short 5-minute recess while you get these changes incorporated. Amy can print out a copy, and we can then take a vote this evening. Acceptable?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so,
Just to vote.
do we have any comments from the public? Any more input from the public? Okay,
Hearing none.
all right. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing for the comprehensive permit for the enclave to be located at 32 acres, located Assessors Map 15, Block 54, Lot 87, a portion of Lot 15, at the described Book 32045, page 137, which includes a parcel of 40 age-restricted homeowner units. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this time, Chris, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll be back.
This is not live, is
All
it?
right, hot dogs. Looks like Sullivan's on Castle Island.
Welcome back to the zoning board of appeals meeting of April 24th, 2019. Amy Brady, our administrative assistant, has provided us with the materials, the list of waivers, plus the comprehensive permit. At this time, I would ask for a motion to accept the comprehensive permit for Norfolk Holdings LLC, CO Placido Development Corporation, for a comprehensive permit for a proposed project known as the Enclaves at Norfolk, to be located on a site consisting of 32.31 acres, located in the Assessors Map 15, Block 54, Lot 87, and a portion of Lot 15, as described in Book 32045, page 137, of which includes a proposal for a total of 48 restricted homeowner units, all to be shown on the plan specifications included with this application.
So moved?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, this is a motion to grant the comprehensive permit. So, Mr. Luciano,
Yes to grant.
Yes to grant.
Yes to grant.
Yes to grant.
yes to grant. Congratulations, thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Appreciate the long hours everyone put in, thank you.
You're welcome. It was worth it.
And, we will pass this around. Signed.
I don't get it.
I say good luck, Tom, but we'll be seeing you again in a few weeks.
Thank you. Yeah. Just don't hold it against me when CCOM shoots before me. They could be really glad to see me.
There we go.
We're gonna do the minutes before we leave. but
Yeah,
we'll
okay.
let them get out of here. Let's just get done. So Amy, you'll make sure you, give them copies of,
Dan, see you later.
Dan, thank you.
All right, Dan, we'll see
Thank
you.
you for clearing this up.
Are you back on May 1st, Dan? May 1st, we have a meeting. Dan? What's May 1st? I think,
May 1st, I don't think Dan is with us.
I thought that was Abbeville.
Abbeville's the end of May.
Oh, end of May, oh, the 22nd,
Yep.
okay.
Why is this so?
You get the night off, Dan.
When am I doing this?
Give it to me.
Okay.
Great, yeah.
All right, remember, we're still in hearing. All right, guys, let's take a look at the, motion minutes of February 27, 2019. Everyone's had a chance to review those?
Yes.
Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 27, 2019?
So moved?
Wait, we have to make the one
Yep.
change
Yep.
though.
All right,
Hey.
Do
good
I
night.
have a second?
Second.
Second?
As amended, right?
Hold on.
Second.
Discussion.
Oh, we just need to add that Don was reclused himself from the hearing for the enclave, and that should just be a note added to the first paragraph.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
so I make a motion that we accept the minutes with that amendment.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. This time, could I get a motion to close the zoning board of appeals meeting at 10:05 PM on April 24th?
So
Room
moved.
124.
Wait, did we vote on this?
Yeah, we did.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Said aye. I heard you say aye.
I blanked out.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Amy.
Hey.
Thank you, Chris.
Oh.
Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Ah.